first contact on the edge of the universe. In the cold, dark expanse of space, the crew of the human exploration vessel Intrepid stared out at the alien world that hung before them like a jewel in the void. The planet, named Epsilon Prime, was the last unexplored system on the fringes of the known galaxy. Captain Elias Mercer, a seasoned explorer with silver hair and a steely gaze, stood at the helm, his hands clasped behind his back. The planet was a mystery. Scans had shown a world teeming with life, but no signals, no signs of civilization. It was as if Epsilon Prime had been cut off from the rest of the galaxy, untouched by the passage of time. The crew was a mix of seasoned veterans and eager newcomers, each one driven by the human spirit of discovery. "Prepare for descent," Captain Mercer ordered, his voice calm and steady. The crew sprang into action, their movements precise and practiced. The Intrepid had been through countless missions, but there was something different about this one. The air was thick with anticipation, a sense that they were about to uncover something extraordinary. As the ship descended through the atmosphere, the planet's surface came into view. Lush forests stretched as far as the eye could see, broken only by towering mountain ranges and vast, shimmering oceans. It was a paradise, untouched and pristine. But as they drew closer, strange structures began to appear on the surface. They were ancient, covered in moss and vines, but clearly not of human origin. "Captain, we're picking up something," said Dr. Lena Voss, the ship's lead scientist. She was a brilliant mind, with a passion for the unknown that rivaled Mercer's own. Her eyes were fixed on the redouts, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's faint, but there's definitely a signal coming from one of those structures." "Can you pinpoint it?" Mercer asked, moving to stand beside her. Voss tapped a few keys, bringing up a holographic display of the planet's surface. A red dot appeared on one of the structures, pulsing slowly. "There, it's coming from inside that building." Mercer studied the display for a moment, then nodded. "Prepare a landing party. Dr. Voss, you're with me." The landing party was small but well-equipped. Along with Captain Mercer and Dr. Voss, there were 2 security officers, Lieutenant Jackson and Sergeant Morales, both veterans of countless skirmishes on the fringes of human space. They were armed and ready for anything, their eyes scanning the surroundings as the shuttle touched down on the surface. The structure loomed before them, ancient and imposing. It was made of a dark, stone-like material that seemed to absorb the light. Strange symbols were etched into the walls, their meaning lost to time. The air was thick with the scent of vegetation and something else, something metallic and cold. "Stay sharp," Mercer said as they approached the entrance. The door was massive, made of the same dark material, and it was ajar, as if someone, or something, had been here before them. They stepped inside, their footsteps echoing in the vast chamber beyond. The air was cool, and the only light came from the beams of their torches. The walls were covered in more of the strange symbols, and there were what looked like machines scattered throughout the room, their purpose unclear. "This place is incredible," Voss whispered, her voice filled with awe. She moved closer to one of the machines, her fingers brushing against its surface. "It's so advanced, but also so old." Mercer nodded, his eyes scanning the room. There was something about this place that set his nerves on edge. It was as if the walls themselves were watching them, waiting. Suddenly, there was a sound, a low hum that seemed to vibrate through the very air. Mercer tensed, his hand moving to his sidearm. What was that? Before anyone could answer, the machine that Voss had been examining sprang to life. Lights flickered on its surface, and the symbols on the walls began to glow with a soft, eerie light. The hum grew louder, filling the chamber with a resonating thrum that seemed to pulse in time with their heartbeats. "Captain, look." Voss pointed to the center of the room, where a holographic image was beginning to form. It was a map of the galaxy, but not as they knew it. There were markings, pathways, and connections that didn't exist on any human chart. "This is a star map," Mercer said, his voice barely above a whisper. But it's not from our galaxy. Voss was already scanning the image, her mind racing. Captain, this is a map of a network of portals connecting different parts of the galaxy and possibly beyond. As they watched, the image zoomed in on a specific point, a star system on the edge of the galaxy. There was a marker there, a destination. This must be where the signal is coming from, Voss said, her voice trembling with excitement. This could be the key to unlocking a whole new part of the galaxy. But Mercer wasn't so sure. There was something about this that felt wrong, like they were being drawn into a trap. He turned to the others. We need to get back to the ship. Now. They turned to leave, but the door they had entered through was no longer there. In its place was a wall of solid stone, seamless and unyielding. Captain, Morales said, his voice tight with fear, we're trapped. Mercer felt a cold knot of dread in his stomach. Whatever they had found here, it wasn't meant to be discovered, and now they were at the mercy of whatever force had been waiting for them. Stay calm, he ordered, forcing his voice to remain steady. We need to find another way out. But even as he spoke, the chamber began to change. The walls seemed to ripple and shift, the symbols glowing brighter. The hum grew louder, almost deafening, and the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. We need to move, Mercer shouted, pulling Voss away from the machine. They ran, searching for any sign of an exit, but the chamber was a maze, the walls shifting and changing before their eyes. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The hum faded, the lights dimmed, and the room fell silent once more. They were back at the entrance, the door once again ajar. It was as if nothing had happened. What the hell was that? Jackson asked, his voice shaking. Mercer didn't have an answer. All he knew was that they needed to get off this planet and fast. As they made their way back to the shuttle, Voss was still studying the map on her datapad, her mind racing with possibilities. But Mercer couldn't shake the feeling that they had just opened a door that should have remained closed. As the shuttle lifted off, he glanced back at the structure, now just a dark speck against the lush landscape. Whatever secrets Epsilon Prime held, they had only scratched the surface. But one thing was certain, this was only the beginning. The Guardians of Epsilon Prime. As the Intrepid ascended back into orbit, the crew was silent, each lost in their thoughts. The encounter on Epsilon Prime had left them shaken, but there was no time to dwell on it. They had a mission to complete, and Captain Mercer knew they were only just beginning to unravel the mystery. Back on the bridge, Mercer stood before the central console, staring at the star map they had retrieved. The point of interest, marked by the ancient alien network, blinked ominously on the display. It was a system on the far edge of the galaxy, far beyond the reach of any known human exploration. Set a course for the coordinates, Mercer ordered. His voice was calm, but inside, his mind was racing. Whatever they had uncovered on Epsilon Prime was leading them somewhere, and they had no choice but to follow. Aye, Captain, the helmsman replied, inputting the coordinates. The engines hummed to life as the Intrepid adjusted its trajectory, heading deeper into uncharted space. Dr. Voss was already at work, her fingers flying over the controls as she analyzed the data they had gathered. Captain, this map is unlike anything we've ever seen. It's ancient, but the technology is far beyond anything we have. If we can understand it, it could open up entire new regions of the galaxy. Mercer nodded, though his thoughts were elsewhere. The encounter on Epsilon Prime had been unsettling, to say the least. The way the chamber had changed, trapping them momentarily, suggested a level of intelligible technology that was far beyond human understanding. He couldn't shake the feeling that they had been tested, and that whatever force was behind it was now watching them. Keep me updated, Mercer said to Voss, before turning to the ship's communication officer. Send a report to Central Command. Let them know we're investigating a potential new star network, but keep the details vague. We don't want to cause a panic. As the ship sped through the void, the crew settled into a tense routine. The unknown destination loomed ahead, and the anticipation was palpable. They were heading into the dark, into a part of the galaxy that no human had ever seen before. Days passed, each one filled with a mixture of excitement and unease. The ship's scanners were on high alert, constantly sweeping for any signs of danger. But space was vast and empty, and there was nothing but the endless stars stretching out before them. Finally, the day came when they approached the coordinates marked on the ancient map. The system was unremarkable at first glance, a dying star with a handful of planets orbiting it, their surfaces barren and lifeless. But as they drew closer, the true nature of the system became clear. "Captain, I'm picking up a massive energy signature," Voss reported, her voice tight with excitement. "It's coming from the third planet." On screen, Mercer ordered. The view shifted to show the planet in question. At first glance, it appeared to be a desolate world, its surface covered in jagged rocks and deep craters. But as they zoomed in, they saw it, a massive structure, larger than any they had seen before, sitting in the middle of a vast, empty plain. "What is that?" Jackson muttered, leaning forward in his seat. "It's a construct," Voss said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And it's active." Mercer stared at the structure, a cold knot forming in his stomach. The design was similar to one they had encountered on Epsilon Prime, but this was on a much larger scale. It was clear that this was the heart of whatever network they had stumbled upon. "We need to investigate," Mercer said, but the words felt hollow. He knew they had no choice, but he also knew that whatever they found down there could change everything. The landing party this time was larger, with more security personnel and specialized equipment. The atmosphere on the shuttle was tense as they descended to the planet's surface. The structure loomed ahead, casting a long shadow over the barren landscape. As they approached, the ship's scanners lit up with activity. The structure was emitting a powerful energy field, one that pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat. "Captain, this field is unlike anything we've encountered before," Voss said, her eyes wide as she studied the readings. "It's alive, in a sense. It's responding to our presence." Mercer tightened his grip on his weapon, his instincts screaming that they were walking into something far beyond their control. But they had come this far, and there was no turning back now. The shuttle touched down near the base of the structure, and the team disembarked. The ground beneath their feet was rough and uneven, the air thin and cold. The structure towered above them, its surface smooth and seamless, with no visible entrances or windows. "Spread out and look for a way in," Mercer ordered. The team moved cautiously, their movements slow and deliberate. There was an oppressive silence, broken only by the crunch of their boots on the rocky ground. It was Voss who found it, a small panel on the side of the structure, hidden beneath a layer of dust. She brushed it off, revealing a set of symbols similar to the ones they had seen on Epsilon Prime. "Captain, over here," she called, her voice echoing in the still air. Mercer approached, his eyes narrowing as he studied the panel. "Can you activate it?" Voss nodded, her fingers moving over the symbols. There was a moment of silence, and then the panel lit up, the symbols glowing brightly. There was a low hum, and the ground beneath their feet trembled. "Step back," Mercer ordered, pulling Voss away from the panel. The team retreated, their weapons raised as the panel slid open, revealing a narrow passageway leading into the structure. "Looks like we found our way in," Jackson said, his voice tense. "Stay close and stay alert," Mercer ordered as they moved into the passage. The walls were smooth and featureless, the only light coming from the panel they had activated. The air was stale, and there was a faint smell of ozone. As they moved deeper into the structure, the passage widened into a large chamber. The walls were lined with more of the strange machines they had seen before, their surfaces pulsing with a soft, blue light. At the center of the chamber was a massive console, its surface covered in symbols and controls. "This is it," Voss said, her voice filled with awe. "This is the control center for the entire network." Mercer approached the console, his eyes scanning the symbols. He had no idea how to operate it, but there was a sense of power here, a feeling that this was the key to everything they had been searching for. Suddenly, the machines around them came to life, their lights flashing brightly. The symbols on the console began to shift and change, forming patterns that seemed to move of their own accord. "What's happening?" Morales asked, his voice tight with fear. Voss was already at work, her fingers flying over the controls. "It's a security protocol. The structure is responding to our presence, and it's not happy." Mercer cursed under his breath. "Can you shut it down?" "I'm trying," Voss replied, her voice tense. "But this technology is so far beyond anything we know. It's like trying to decipher a language without a key." The chamber began to shake, the walls vibrating with a low, ominous hum. The lights flickered, and the air grew thick with the scent of ozone. "We need to get out of here," Mercer said, his voice calm despite the rising panic in his chest. "Now." But before they could move, the chamber was filled with a blinding light. Mercer raised his arm to shield his eyes, but the light was overwhelming, burning through his vision. And then, as quickly as it had come, the light faded. Mercer blinked, trying to clear the spots from his vision. The chamber was still, the machines silent once more. But something had changed. The air felt different, charged with a new energy. Mercer could feel it in his bones, a deep, resonating hum that seemed to echo through the very fabric of the structure. "We're not alone," Voss whispered, her voice trembling. Mercer turned to her, his eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" Voss pointed to the console. The symbols had stopped shifting, and now displayed a single clear message in an alien script. But somehow Mercer understood. The words burned in his mind, clear and unmistakable, the awakening of the gate. The words on the console glowed ominously in the dim light of the chamber. "We are the Guardians. The gate is open." Captain Mercer felt a chill crawl down his spine as he stared at the alien script. The air around him seemed charged, vibrating with an energy that resonated deep within his bones. The structure they had uncovered was more than just a relic. It was a sentinel, guarding something ancient and powerful. Voss was the first to break the silence, her voice trembling with both fear and awe. "Captain, this changes everything. This isn't just a control center, it's a gateway, a bridge to something far beyond our understanding." Mercer nodded, his mind racing to comprehend the magnitude of what they had discovered. If this is a gate, then where does it lead? And why was it hidden here, in the far reaches of the galaxy? Before anyone could respond, the chamber shuddered again. The machines lining the walls hummed to life, their lights pulsing in a rhythmic pattern. The ground beneath them vibrated as if the entire structure was awakening from a long slumber. "Everyone, stay sharp," Mercer ordered, his voice cutting through the growing tension. The team spread out, weapons at the ready, their eyes scanning the chamber for any sign of danger. Voss was already back at the console, her fingers flying over the controls as she tried to make sense of the alien technology. "Captain, the energy readings are spiking. Whatever we activated, it's drawing massive amounts of power from somewhere." "Can you shut it down?" Mercer asked, his gaze locked on the console. "I'm trying, but the system is locked in some kind of sequence," Voss replied, frustration evident in her voice. "It's like the entire structure is responding to a command that we triggered." The hum of the machines grew louder, and the chamber's walls began to glow with a faint, otherworldly light. The symbols on the console shifted again, forming patterns that seemed to ripple across the surface like waves. "Captain, we need to leave," Jackson urged, his voice tight with fear. "Whatever this place is, it's not safe." Mercer hesitated, torn between the instinct to retreat and the overwhelming curiosity that had driven him this far. But before he could make a decision, the ground beneath them shook violently, nearly knocking the team off their feet. "Incoming transmission," the communication officer shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "On screen," Mercer ordered. The view screen flickered to life, revealing a static-filled image of a figure cloaked in shadows. The figure's features were obscured, But its presence was undeniable, a being of immense power, watching them from across the stars. Humans, the figure's voice echoed through the chamber, resonating with a deep, commanding tone. You have awakened the gate. You stand on the threshold of a power that is beyond your comprehension. Mercer stepped forward, his jaw clenched. Who are you? What is this place? We are the Guardians, the figure replied, its voice unwavering. We were tasked with protecting the gate, ensuring that only those who are worthy may pass through. You have proven your courage by reaching this far, but courage alone is not enough. Voss glanced at Mercer, her eyes wide with realization. Captain, they're testing us. This entire structure, the network, it's all a trial, designed to judge whether we are worthy of whatever lies beyond. Mercer nodded slowly, his mind racing. What do we need to do to prove our worth? The figure on the screen was silent for a moment, as if considering the question. Then, with a voice like thunder, it spoke again. The gate must be opened, but to do so requires a sacrifice. You must demonstrate your resolve, your willingness to face the unknown, no matter the cost. Sacrifice. Morellas repeated, his voice tinged with dread. What kind of sacrifice? The figure's image flickered, its form shifting into a blur of static. A life must be given, a life for the power that lies beyond the gate. Only then will the way be opened. The chamber fell into a heavy silence as the crew processed the enormity of the demand. The weight of the decision hung in the air, a tangible force that pressed down on each of them. Mercer stared at the figure on the screen, his mind whirling. He had led his crew into this unknown, driven by curiosity and the hope of discovery. But now, faced with the prospect of sacrificing one of his own, the burden of command felt heavier than ever before. Captain, Voss said quietly, her voice breaking through his thoughts. We don't have to do this. We can leave, regroup, and find another way. Mercer shook his head slowly. If we leave now, we'll never know what lies beyond. This could be the key to unlocking the secrets of the galaxy, to understanding the forces that have shaped our universe. But at what cost? Jackson interjected, his voice tight with tension. We can't just throw a life away for the sake of curiosity. We don't even know if they're telling the truth, Morales added, his gaze locked on the flickering image of the Guardian. This could all be a trap. Mercer looked at his team, the people who had trusted him to lead them through the unknown. He saw the fear in their eyes, but also the resolve. They had come this far, together, and now the decision was his to make. The figure on the screen spoke again, its voice filling the chamber. The choice is yours, Captain. Will you sacrifice for the greater good, or will you turn away from the unknown? Mercer closed his eyes, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He knew that whatever choice he made, it would define not only his legacy, but the future of humanity's place in the galaxy. After a long moment, he opened his eyes and took a deep breath. No, he said firmly, his voice cutting through the tension. We will not sacrifice a life. We came here to explore, to learn, and to push the boundaries of what we know. But we will not do it at the cost of our humanity. The figure on the screen was silent, its form flickering as if considering Mercer's words. Then, slowly, the static began to clear, revealing a pair of glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through the screen. You have made your choice, the Guardian said, its voice resonating with a deep, almost sorrowful tone. The gate will remain closed. But know this, Captain Mercer, you have shown wisdom and compassion in the face of the unknown. For that, you have earned the respect of the Guardians. The screen went dark, and the machines around them powered down, leaving the chamber in eerie silence. The humming energy that had filled the air dissipated, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Mercer let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. We're done here, he said quietly. Let's get back to the ship. The team moved quickly, their steps lighter now that the weight of the decision had been lifted. As they made their way back to the shuttle, Mercer glanced back at the structure one last time. The gate remained closed, its secrets hidden for now. But he knew that their journey was far from over. Back on the Intrepid, The crew gathered on the bridge, the tension replaced by a sense of camaraderie. They had faced the unknown together, and they had emerged with their principles intact. "Captain," Voss said, her voice filled with admiration, "you made the right choice. Whatever lies beyond that gate, we'll find another way to uncover it." Mercer nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "We'll keep exploring, keep pushing forward, but we'll do it on our terms, without losing sight of who we are." The Intrepid set a course back toward familiar space, leaving the Guardians and their gate behind. The crew knew that their journey was far from over, but they also knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. As the stars streaked by outside the ship, Captain Mercer allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries, and they had only scratched the surface. But with his crew by his side, he felt ready to face whatever the universe had in store. "The journey continues," he thought, a sense of determination settling in his chest, "and so do we." The veil of shadows. As the Intrepid navigated back into familiar space, the crew remained on high alert. The encounter with the Guardians had left them shaken, yet resolute. Captain Mercer's decision to forego the sacrifice had solidified their unity, but it had also opened up a new set of questions that gnawed at the edges of their minds. Days passed with little incident, the void of space stretching out endlessly before them. But the tension on the ship was palpable, a silent undercurrent that kept everyone on edge. Voss, ever the diligent scientist, spent hours poring over the data they had collected from the alien structure, her mind racing to piece together the mysteries that still lingered. One evening, as the ship sailed quietly through the stars, Voss made a discovery that sent a shiver down her spine. She was in her lab, surrounded by screens and holographic projections, when a series of energy signatures caught her attention. They were faint, almost imperceptible, but unmistakably there, a web of energy patterns stretching out from the location of the gate. She immediately alerted Captain Mercer, who arrived at the lab with Jackson and Morales in tow. "What did you find?" Mercer asked, his eyes narrowing as he studied the data on the screen. Voss pointed to the faint energy trails. "These readings, they're not just random signatures. They form a pattern, one that extends far beyond the gate itself. It's like a network connecting the gate to other locations across the galaxy." Morales leaned in closer, his brow furrowed. "You're saying there could be more of these gates out there, connected by this network?" Voss nodded, her expression serious. "It's possible. If this network is as vast as it seems, then it might be the key to understanding how the Guardians have maintained control over the gates for so long. But there's something else." She tapped a few keys, and the holographic display shifted to reveal a cluster of energy signatures converging on a distant, uncharted region of space. "This area," she said, her voice low, "is emitting an energy signature that's similar to the one we detected at the gate, but it's much stronger, almost like a beacon." Jackson's eyes widened. "A beacon? Could it be another gate?" "Maybe," Voss replied, her mind already racing with possibilities. "Or something else entirely. Whatever it is, it's powerful, and it's active." Mercer stared at the display, his mind weighing the risks and rewards. The Guardians had warned them to stay away, yet the allure of discovery was too great to ignore. "We need to investigate," he said finally, his tone decisive. "But we go in carefully. We don't know what we're dealing with." The crew prepared for the journey, their nerves steel for whatever lay ahead. The region of space Voss had pinpointed was remote, far from any known trade routes or colonies. As the Intrepid drew closer, the energy readings grew stronger, pulsating with a rhythm that seemed almost alive. Finally, they arrived. The ship emerged from hyperspace into a void unlike anything they had ever seen. The stars themselves seemed dimmer here, as if shrouded by a cosmic veil. And in the center of this darkness, a massive structure loomed, its form barely visible against the inky blackness. The crew gasped as the structure came into view on the main screen. It was ancient, far larger than the gate they had encountered before. Its surface was covered in strange, shifting patterns, as if the very material of the structure was alive, responding to their presence. "Captain, this is incredible," Voss whispered, her eyes wide with awe. "Whatever this is, it's unlike anything we've seen before." Mercer's gaze was fixed on the screen, his mind racing. "Scan the structure. I want to know what we're dealing with." Jackson and Morales worked quickly, their fingers flying over the controls. The scans revealed a complex network of tunnels and chambers within the structure, but no life signs. However, the energy readings were off the charts, emanating from deep within the heart of the construct. "There's something in there," Morales said, his voice tinged with unease. "Something powerful." Mercer nodded, his decision made. "Prepare a landing party. We're going in." The shuttle descended toward the structure, the tension inside the cabin thick enough to cut with a knife. Voss, Morales, and Jackson were on edge, their minds racing with the possibilities of what they might find. Mercer remained calm, his focus sharp. He knew that whatever awaited them inside could change the course of their mission, perhaps even the fate of humanity itself. They landed on a wide, flat platform that extended from the side of the structure. The surface was smooth, almost glass-like, and it emitted a faint, eerie glow. As they stepped out of the shuttle, the air around them felt heavy, charged with an unnatural energy. "Keep your eyes open," Mercer instructed, his voice steady. "We don't know what's in here." The team moved cautiously toward a large, arching entrance that led into the structure. The walls inside were covered with the same shifting patterns they had seen from space, and the air was filled with a low, vibrating hum that seemed to resonate deep within their bones. As they ventured deeper into the structure, the hum grew louder, and the patterns on the walls began to shift more rapidly, as if reacting to their presence. The corridors twisted and turned, leading them ever downward, toward the source of the energy. Finally, they reached a vast chamber, at the center of which stood a massive, pulsating orb of light. The orb hovered above a pedestal, its surface rippling with energy. The patterns on the walls converged here, flowing into the orb as if feeding it. Voss approached cautiously, her eyes wide with wonder. This is incredible. The energy readings are off the scale. This could be the power source for the entire network." Mercer stared at the orb, his mind racing. "What is it? A weapon? A power source? Or something else entirely?" Voss murmured. "We need to study it, but we have to be careful. This thing is emitting enough energy to power a fleet of ships, or destroy one." As they stood before the orb, the chamber around them began to tremble. The patterns on the walls shifted rapidly, and the hum in the air grew to a deafening roar. The orb pulsed with light, growing brighter and brighter until it was almost blinding. "Captain, we need to get out of here," Jackson shouted over the noise, his eyes wide with fear. But before Mercer could respond, the orb exploded in a flash of light, sending a shockwave through the chamber. The team was thrown to the ground, the air crackling with energy. The patterns on the walls began to glow, forming symbols that pulsed in time with the orb's light. Voss struggled to her feet, her mind racing to comprehend what was happening. "Captain, I think it's trying to communicate with us." Mercer forced himself to stand, his eyes locked on the pulsating orb. "What do you mean?" "The symbols, they're not random. They're forming patterns, like a language," Voss explained, her voice filled with urgency. "It's trying to tell us something." The orb pulsed again, the light growing even brighter. The symbols on the walls flashed in sequence, forming a complex pattern that seemed to burn itself into their minds. Voss gasped as the meaning of the symbols became clear. "It's a warning," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The network, it's not just a series of gates. It's a prison, and something is trying to get out." Mercer's blood ran cold as the realization hit him. "We need to leave. Now." The team scrambled to their feet, racing back through the twisting corridors toward the shuttle. The entire structure seemed to be coming alive around them, the walls pulsing with light and energy. The hum in the air had become a roar, vibrating through their bodies as they ran. They reached the shuttle and launched just as the platform beneath them began to crack and shift. The structure shuddered violently, the orb's light visible even from space, growing brighter with each passing moment. As the Intrepid pulled away, the massive structure began to collapse in on itself, the orb at its center exploding in a blinding flash of light. The shockwave rippled through space, shaking the ship to its core. On the bridge, Mercer and his crew watched in stunned silence as the structure disintegrated, leaving nothing but darkness in its wake. The network of energy patterns on their screens flickered and then vanished, leaving only static. "We need to report this," Voss said quietly, her voice filled with a mix of awe and fear. "The Guardians, the network, everything. This is bigger than anything we've encountered." Mercer nodded, his mind still reeling from what they had witnessed. "We will. But first, we need to get as far away from this place as possible." As the Intrepid set a course back to familiar space, the crew remained silent, each lost in their own thoughts. They had uncovered a secret that could shake the foundations of the galaxy, a power that was never meant to be unleashed, and they knew that their journey was far from over. The galaxy was vast, filled with dangers and mysteries that they had only begun to uncover. But Captain Mercer and his crew were ready. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, their resolve unshaken, their curiosity burning brighter than ever. The awakening. The journey back to familiar space was marked by an uneasy calm. The crew of the Intrepid had barely survived their encounter with the ancient structure, and the weight of what they had discovered lingered in the air like a shadow. The memory of the pulsating orb and the symbols it had projected haunted their thoughts, filling them with a sense of foreboding. Captain Mercer spent hours in his quarters, reviewing the data they had collected. The warning from the orb echoed in his mind. The network, it's not just a series of gates, it's a prison, and something is trying to get out. He knew they had to inform the Galactic Council, but he also knew that doing so could have unpredictable consequences. The Council was notorious for its bureaucratic inertia, and Mercer feared that their warnings might be dismissed, or, worse, trigger a panic that could spread across the galaxy. Finally, he decided to consult with Voss, Jackson, and Morales. They gathered in the briefing room, their faces reflecting the same mix of anxiety and determination. "We need to report this to the Council," Mercer began, his tone firm. "But we need to be careful about how we present it. The last thing we want is to cause a panic, or to have this information buried in red tape." Voss nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Agreed. We should focus on the facts, the energy network, the structure, and the orb's warning. But we need to be clear that this is a potential threat, not just some ancient artifact." Morales chimed in, his voice laced with concern. "And what about the Guardians? They warned us to stay away, but we ignored them. If they find out what we've uncovered, they might take drastic action." "That's a risk we'll have to take," Mercer replied. "But we can't let that stop us from doing the right thing. The galaxy needs to know about this. We need to be prepared for whatever is coming." Jackson, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Captain, what if we're wrong? What if the Guardians were right to keep this secret? We've seen what that orb could do. Maybe it's better if the Council doesn't get involved." Mercer met his gaze, his expression resolute. "That's a possibility, but it's not one I'm willing to gamble on. If there's even a chance that something dangerous is trying to break free, we have to act. We owe it to the millions of lives that could be at risk." With that, the decision was made. The Intrepid set a course for the nearest Council outpost, a remote station on the fringes of civilized space. As they approached the station, Mercer sent an encrypted message to the Council, requesting an emergency meeting. He included a summary of their findings, but withheld the more sensitive details until they could speak in person. The response was swift. The Council agreed to a meeting, and the Intrepid docked at the station a few hours later. Mercer, Voss, Jackson, and Morales made their way to the Council chamber, where they were greeted by a small delegation of Council representatives. The chamber was a stark contrast to the rest of the station, with sleek walls and a large circular table at its center. The representatives were seated around the table, their faces unreadable as the crew of the Intrepid entered. Captain Mercer, one of the representatives, an elderly Saurian named Councillor Threx, began, "We received your message. Please, tell us what you've discovered." Mercer took a deep breath and began to recount their journey, starting with their encounter with the Guardians and leading up to their discovery of the ancient structure. He described the energy network, the orb, and the symbols that had formed a warning of something attempting to escape. As he spoke, the expressions of the council representatives grew more serious. Frex leaned forward, his eyes narrowed. "And you believe this network could be a prison? For what exactly?" Voss stepped in, her voice calm and measured. "We don't know for certain, Counselor, but the energy readings we detected suggest that whatever is at the heart of this network is immensely powerful. The orb's warning indicated that this network was designed to contain something. If it were to break free, the consequences could be catastrophic." Councillor Threx exchanged glances with his colleagues before turning back to the Intrepid crew. "This is a grave matter. If what you say is true, then the entire galaxy could be at risk. We must take action immediately." Mercer nodded. "We agree, but we also believe that this situation requires a delicate approach. The Guardians might see any attempt to interfere with the network as a direct threat, and we don't want to provoke them into hostile action." Another representative, a human named Councillor Asher, spoke up. "The Guardians have always been enigmatic, but they've never shown outright hostility to the Council. If they warned you to stay away, it suggests they're guarding something of immense importance. We need to find out what that is before we proceed." Frex nodded in agreement. "Indeed. We'll send a team to investigate the site, but we must proceed with caution. Captain Mercer, we'll need all the data your team collected, as well as any insights you might have." Mercer exchanged a glance with Voss before replying, "Of course, Counselor. We'll provide everything we have." The meeting concluded with the Council agreeing to assemble a specialized task force to investigate the network further. The Intrepid crew was instructed to remain at the station for debriefing and to assist the task force as needed. As they left the Council chamber, Morales let out a sigh of relief. "Well, that went better than I expected." Voss nodded, but her expression remained troubled. "I just hope we made the right call. If we've underestimated the Guardians, or whatever is trapped in that network, it could spell disaster." Mercer placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We did what we had to do, Voss. Now we just have to be ready for whatever comes next." The crew returned to the Intrepid and settled in to wait. The station's docking bay was quiet, the hum of the ship's systems the only sound as they prepared for the next phase of their mission. They knew that the galaxy's future might hinge on the outcome of the Council's investigation. Days passed in tense anticipation. The task force assembled by the Council was composed of some of the best minds and most skilled operatives in the galaxy, and they worked tirelessly to decipher the data provided by the Intrepid crew. But as the investigation progressed, strange reports began to trickle in from across the galaxy. Unexplained phenomena, energy surges, disturbances in hyperspace, and mysterious disappearances were becoming increasingly common. The symbols from the orb appeared in places they shouldn't have, etched into the surfaces of derelict ships and abandoned stations. Rumors spread like wildfire, whispering of an ancient evil stirring from its slumber. The network, it seemed, was weakening, and whatever was trapped within it was growing stronger. One night, as Mercer sat in his quarters, a message came through on a secure channel. It was from the Council's task force, marked with the highest level of urgency. He opened the message, his heart pounding as he read the words on the screen. "The network is failing. Prepare for immediate evacuation. The awakening has begun." Mercer's blood ran cold. He knew what this meant. They had run out of time. The galaxy was about to face a threat unlike anything it had ever encountered, and the Intrepid would be on the front lines of the coming storm. He quickly rallied his crew, issuing orders for immediate departure. The station was already in a state of controlled chaos, with ships scrambling to leave as the threat level escalated. The Intrepid launched from the station, its engines roaring to life as they set a course for the heart of the disturbance. As the stars streaked past them, Mercer and his crew steeled themselves for the battle ahead. The galaxy was on the brink of chaos, and it was up to them to prevent the darkness from spreading. The Intrepid hurtled through space, racing against time to reach the source of the disturbance. The awakening had begun, and the galaxy's fate hung in the balance. In the depths, the heart of the storm, the Intrepid raced through hyperspace, the stars stretching into streaks of light as the ship hurtled toward the source of the disturbance. The crew was on high alert, each member focused and prepared for what they knew would be the most dangerous mission they had ever undertaken. The weight of the galaxy's fate pressed down on them, but they were determined to see this through. As they approached their destination, the ship's sensors began to pick up abnormal readings. The space around them seemed to warp and shift, as if reality itself was being twisted by some unseen force. The stars flickered, and the darkness between them seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. Captain Mercer stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen. "Report," he ordered, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. Jackson was at his station, his hands moving rapidly over the controls. "Captain, the energy readings are off the charts. Whatever's causing this is incredibly powerful, unlike anything we've ever seen." Morales, who was monitoring the ship's weapons systems, chimed in. "Shields are holding, but I'm not sure for how long. We're getting hit by waves of energy that are straining our defenses." Voss, who had been studying the data from the sensors, looked up with a grave expression. "Captain, I think we're nearing the epicenter. The disturbance is originating from a massive structure, larger than anything we've encountered before. It's like the one we found earlier, but on a much grander scale." Mercer nodded, his mind racing. "Can you identify the source of the energy?" Voss shook her head. "Not yet. The interference is too strong. But whatever it is, it's causing space itself to become unstable." As they drew closer, the viewscreen filled with the image of the structure. It was colossal, a monolithic construct of unknown origin, its surface covered in the same shifting patterns they had seen on the smaller structure. But this one was different. Its patterns were more chaotic, more violent, as if the structure was alive and thrashing against some invisible force. The structure seemed to be at the center of a massive storm, a swirling vortex of energy that crackled with lightning and rolled with the sound of tearing metal. The storm pulsed with a dark, crimson light, illuminating the structure and casting eerie shadows across its surface. "We've arrived," Mercer said quietly, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the situation. "All hands, prepare for battle. We don't know what we're up against, but we're not going down without a fight." The crew moved with practiced efficiency, each member taking their positions and readying the ship for combat. The Intrepid approached the structure cautiously, its shields shimmering as they absorbed the energy blasts emanating from the storm. Suddenly, the ship was rocked by a massive explosion. The lights flickered, and alarms blared as the crew struggled to regain control. "Damage report," Mercer shouted over the noise. Jackson quickly checked the readings. "Hull integrity is holding, but we've lost power to the starboard thrusters. The storm is intensifying. We're taking heavy damage." "Divert power to the shields and engines," Mercer ordered. "We need to get closer to the structure." Morales nodded and began rerouting power, the ship lurching as it fought against the pull of the storm. The closer they got, the more intense the energy waves became, battering the ship from all sides. As they neared the structure, the viewscreen flickered, and for a brief moment, the crew caught a glimpse of something inside the storm, something massive and terrifying. A shape, barely visible through the swirling energy, moved within the heart of the storm, its form indistinct but undeniably menacing. "What the hell is that?" Jackson muttered, his eyes wide with fear. Voss stared at the screen, her heart pounding. "It's the source of the disturbance. It's breaking free." Mercer clenched his fists, his mind racing. They were out of time. Whatever was trapped inside the structure was awakening, and if it escaped, it would bring destruction on an unimaginable scale. "We need to stop it," Mercer said, his voice filled with determination. "Voss, is there any way we can destabilize the structure? Maybe we can force it back into containment." Voss quickly analyzed the data, her fingers flying over controls. "There's a possibility. If we can create a feedback loop within the structure's energy network, we might be able to collapse it from within. But it's risky. There's a good chance the ship won't survive the process." "We don't have a choice," Mercer replied. "Prepare the feedback loop. Jackson, Morales, get ready to fire everything we've got at that structure. We need to buy Voss as much time as possible." The crew worked quickly, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. Voss tapped into the structure's energy network, her mind focused on creating the feedback loop that would hopefully contain the threat. Jackson and Morales armed the ship's weapons, targeting the most vulnerable points on the structure. "Feedback loop is ready," Voss reported. "But once we initiate it, we'll have less than a minute to get out of here before the whole thing collapses." Mercer nodded. "Understood. On my mark, we fire everything we've got. Voss, initiate the feedback loop as soon as we've fired. Everyone else, brace for impact." The crew tensed, their eyes locked on the view screen as the Intrepid lined up for the attack. The storm raged around them, the ship shaking violently as it fought to stay on course. "Mark," Mercer shouted. The Intrepid unleashed a barrage of missiles and energy blasts, the weapons streaking through the storm and slamming into the structure with devastating force. The storm flared in response, the energy waves intensifying as the structure began to buckle under the assault. "Initiating feedback loop," Voss called out, her hands moving rapidly over the controls. The structure shuddered violently as the feedback loop took hold, the energy within it beginning to spiral out of control. The storm grew even more chaotic, the crimson light pulsing in time with the structure's death throes. "Get us out of here," Mercer ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. Jackson and Morales pushed the ship's engines to their limits, the Intrepid lurching forward as it tried to escape the collapsing structure. The ship was battered by energy waves, its shields flickering and failing as the storm threatened to tear them apart. Just as it seemed the ship wouldn't make it, the structure behind them collapsed in on itself with a deafening roar. The storm imploded, the energy spiraling inward and consuming the structure in a blinding flash of light. The shockwave from the collapse caught the Intrepid, sending it spinning wildly through space. The crew was thrown from their stations, the lights flickering as the ship's systems struggled to stay online. For a moment, everything went dark. Then, slowly, the lights came back on. The ship stabilized, its engines sputtering but still functional. The crew groaned as they pulled themselves back to their feet, checking the damage. "We're alive," Jackson said, his voice filled with disbelief. "We actually made it." Mercer let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Status report." Morales quickly scanned the systems. "Shields are down, but hull integrity is holding. We've sustained heavy damage, but the engines are still operational." Voss, who had been slumped over her console, looked up with a tired smile. "The feedback loop worked. The structure is gone. Whatever was trapped inside it, it's been contained." The crew let out a collective sigh of relief. They had done it. They had stopped the awakening, at least for now. But as they surveyed the damage to the ship and the empty space where the structure had once been, Mercer knew that their victory had come at a cost. The galaxy was safe, but only for the moment. The storm had been a warning, a harbinger of something far more dangerous lurking in the shadows of the universe. "We need to get back to the Council," Mercer said finally, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "They need to know what happened here." The Intrepid turned away from the remnants of the storm and set a course for the nearest Council station. The crew was battered and bruised, but their spirits were unbroken. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but they knew that their journey was far from over. As the ship sailed through the stars, Captain Mercer allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. The galaxy was vast and filled with dangers they had only begun to understand. But whatever lay ahead, he knew that his crew would face it with the same courage and determination that had brought them this far. The storm had passed, but the shadows of the universe were deep and treacherous. And as the Intrepid continued its journey, Mercer knew that the battle was far from over. The awakening had been halted, but the darkness had only just begun to stir. The aftermath and the unknown. The Intrepid limped back into familiar space, its once pristine hull now scarred and battle-worn. The crew, though exhausted, remained vigilant, aware that the fight they had narrowly survived was only the beginning. The Council station loomed ahead, a beacon of civilization in the otherwise hostile expanse of space. As the ship approached, the crew prepared for the debriefing that would determine their next steps. Captain Mercer stood at the helm, staring out at the station as it grew larger on the viewscreen. His thoughts were a whirlwind of what had transpired and the weight of the unknown that still hung over them. The structure they had destroyed was merely a piece of a far greater puzzle, one that the galaxy was only beginning to comprehend. "We've established contact with the station," Captain Vosk reported, her voice cutting through the silence. "They're preparing to receive us." "Good," Mercer replied, his tone steady but strained. "Let's get this over with." As the Intrepid docked, the crew was met with a team of medics and engineers, ready to assess the damage and tend to the wounded. The atmosphere on the station was tense. Word of the disturbance had already spread, and there was an air of anticipation as the crew disembarked. Mercer and his senior officers were escorted to the council chamber, where the galaxy's most powerful leaders waited. The chamber was vast, with high ceilings and walls lined with holographic displays of star maps and data readouts. The council members sat at a long table, their expressions grim as they watched the crew enter. The council chair, an older human with silver hair and a stern demeanor, motioned for them to sit. "Captain Mercer, we've received your preliminary report, but we need to hear the full account. What happened out there?" Mercer took a deep breath and began to recount the events. He spoke of the storm, the colossal structure, and the entity they had glimpsed within it. He described the feedback loop that had collapsed the structure and how they had narrowly escaped with their lives. When he finished, the chamber was silent. The council members exchanged uneasy glances, the gravity of the situation sinking in. "This is deeply troubling," the chair finally said, his voice heavy with concern. "We've never encountered anything like this before. If what you're saying is true, then the galaxy may be facing a threat far greater than any of us could have imagined." Voss leaned forward, her face serious. "The entity within that structure, whatever it was, it's just the beginning. We've seen the tip of the iceberg, and we have no idea how deep it goes." The chair nodded solemnly. "Your actions may have delayed whatever is coming, but we can't afford to be complacent. We need to prepare." "Agreed," Mercer said, "but we need more information. We need to understand what we're dealing with. And for that, we need to study the remnants of the structure and the energy signatures it left behind." The council deliberated quietly among themselves, their voices hushed. Finally, the chair turned back to Mercer. "We'll authorize a task force to investigate further, but we need to move quickly. The galaxy is on the brink, and we can't afford to be caught off guard." Mercer nodded. "We'll do whatever it takes." As the meeting adjourned, the crew of the Intrepid was left to prepare for their next mission. The council had given them their orders, but the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. They had seen the darkness that lay beyond the edges of known space, and they knew that the true battle had only just begun. Back on the ship, Mercer gathered his senior officers in the briefing room. The mood was somber, but there was a resolve in their eyes, a determination to see this through, no matter the cost. "We've been through hell and back," Mercer began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "But we're still standing, and as long as we stand, we fight. We faced the unknown and survived. Now we go back into the fray, stronger and smarter. We find out what's out there, and we stop it." The officers nodded, their confidence in their captain unshaken. They had faced impossible odds before, and they would do it again. The galaxy was depending on them. As the Intrepid prepared to depart, the crew couldn't help but feel the weight of what lay ahead. The scars of their previous battle were still fresh, but they knew that they couldn't rest. The storm had passed, but the shadows remained. In the silence of space, the Intrepid once again set course for the unknown. The stars stretched out before them, a vast, uncharted frontier, filled with dangers and mysteries yet to be discovered. But no matter what awaited them, the crew knew that they would face it together. They had seen the darkness, and they had survived. Now they would face it again, with the courage and determination that defined humanity's place among the stars. The galaxy was vast and unforgiving, but the human spirit was unyielding. As the ship disappeared into the depths of space, the crew steeled themselves for the challenges to come. The awakening had been halted, but the shadows were only beginning to stir. The battle for the galaxy was far from over, and the Intrepid would be there to meet it head-on. For in the heart of every storm, there is a calm, a moment of clarity before the true fury is unleashed. And in that calm, the crew of the Intrepid knew that they would find their strength. They had faced the unknown, and they would do so again, with unwavering resolve. The journey continued, and the story of the Intrepid and her crew was far from over. The stars awaited, and with them, the challenges that would test the very limits of human ingenuity, resilience, and determination. And so the Intrepid sailed into the night, ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead, knowing that they were humanity's first line of defense against the unknown. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for the next chapter in the saga of the Intrepid and the brave souls who called her home. Whatever came next, they would be ready.